Speaking of CBAM and EU doubling down on everything, this will obviously have quite an impact on industrial commodity markets, industrial players within and outside the EU. I guess, what do you see as the impact on those guys?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of impacts that are quite important here. So one is the direct cost impacts kind of that we already know about. And then two is the policy uncertainty around the policy as a whole. And if you look at the cost impacts, they're quite significant. In 2026, we expect costs of around 9 billion euros if trade flows remain the same, and that could increase to 22 billion euros by 2035. And this is predominantly falling on some of the large emissions-intensive import sectors like iron and steel, which I think is responsible for about 75% of those costs, but also significant costs for aluminium, for fertilizer, for cement as well. So these costs, of course, are having a large impact on decisions around how companies are structuring their supply chains, and even if certain producers are choosing to sell into the EU markets or sell elsewhere. So we are seeing that there is an ongoing process, particularly from downstream buyers, making decisions about, okay, do we need to strategically rethink the shape of our supply chain? Do we need to look at moving to other suppliers that have a lower carbon intensity of their production and avoid some of the producers that have high emissions intensity that is only going to increase in costs over time. Now, the second point on policy uncertainty is a much harder one for clients to manage because there are, of course, outstanding implementation decisions that the European Commission needs to make around things like the benchmarks for the application of CBAM liabilities, but there's also fairly significant policy changes that they flagged. We're expecting policy certainty around potential for export rebates as it relates to CBAM within the next few weeks. But in the longer term, there's questions about the expansion of CBAM to downstream sectors and how that could affect the overall incentives and decisions around things like supply chains as well.